Let us reflect on the theme, all is safe in obedience. The word obedience in the modern world is disliked as it evokes a sense of superior and inferior, being commanded or forced to follow a command and so on. But as Christians, we are all called to practice this great virtue because, according to St. Francis de Sales, obedience guarantees security and disobedience breeds mistrust. In giving the example of the sunflower that turns along with the leaves in the direction of the sun, so too the devout are called to turn their hearts in obedience to the will of God by obeying the commandments. While those who desire to grow in perfection will furthermore turn to God by responding without any reserve to His counsels and inspirations. Holy obedience, according to St. Francis, is of three kinds. The first that must be practiced by all Christians in obeying the commandments of God and the Church. The second is religious obedience, that beyond the commandments follows also the evangelical counsels. The third is perfect obedience, the example of which is provided by Jesus on the cross. Now the question is, why do we need to obey? What makes it safe in obedience? St. Francis de Sales was convinced that when we abandon self-love in order to surrender to the will of God, we walk in the footsteps of our Master. He goes further in considering obedience as a companion of charity, which allows us to be motivated by love, not by constraint. Thus, the most humble action done out of obedience has as much merit in the eyes of God as an act of charity. St. Francis cites the example of our father in faith to let us know to what extent one needs to put one's faith in the one who has called us. God asked Abraham to leave his country and his kinsmen and go to a place God would show him, and he obeyed. In doing so, he became the friend of God. In 1604, St. Francis wrote to Madame de Chantal, "Love and not force should inspire all you do." In his letter to her, he reiterated, "I want you to have a spirit of liberty, not the kind that excludes obedience, for that is the liberty of the flesh, but the kind that excludes constraint and scruples." In his spiritual conferences, he addresses the religious saying, "It is obedience which primarily makes one a religious. You may have the desire of martyrdom itself for the love of God, but if you have no obedience, it is nothing." A person who is truly obedient loves the rules, respects them, and considers them as the true path to the union of his spirit with God. The end result is that the person will live gently and peacefully like a child in the arms of his dear mother. He points out that senior religious who, after rendering great service over the years, relaxes his practice of obedience, even in little matters, may be compared to a master captain who, after laboring hard to save his ship while sailing across the high seas and piloting his vessel safely ashore, would then proceed to engineer a shipwreck at the port, choosing to jump overboard and drown when he has reached the port. The Holy Scripture says, "The truly obedient will win many glorious victories in the exercise of obedience, however dangerous they will be." That is how God will lead us safely through the practice of obedience.